Hey everyone, welcome to Be the Change. My name is Lily Mott, and today's episode is about how change comes when you go and get it. This week's episode features Anna Calvert, who is a social activist raising awareness about a variety of issues, including the accessibility of CPR and first aid training. I met Anna at an I Will Ambassador Residential and think her story and the passion that she has for her work are really inspiring. So, without further ado, let's get started with this episode featuring Anna Calvert.
I'm Anna Calvert. I'm 17 years old and I am a social activist for a lot of different things, really. But my main cause is making sure that first aid and CPR becomes really important in society. And the main aim is to get it in the curriculum so that every school age child will learn CPR or first aid at some point in their education. We're teaching English and maths like it's no one's business, but we're not really focusing on the life skills and what could happen in the worst case scenario.
So, Anna, can you tell me the story? I know that you've already told me in person when I met you, but can you tell me the story on the podcast about what got you involved in raising awareness about these different issues and especially raising awareness about first aid and CPR training?
Well, essentially, it originally started when I was little. I was always like, I love doing bake sales and raising money for charity, and I feel like that's probably where it stemmed from. And my parents were always very involved in different charity works, and I was always quite a sickly child as well. So we did quite a lot for like Ask Me UK and like allergy awareness. And I met a lot of different kids in different situations, and I thought, oh my God, someone needs to help them type thing, and we all need to kind of help each other, and it makes it more of a collective thing and more voices make more issues heard. And then my big first step in was Bite Back, which is a children's health organisation, which specialises in like free school meals and making sure that the big corporate food giants are held responsible for the way they act within the food system. And that opened so many doors. So I've spoken in Italy at food conferences, I've been to Parliament and spoken there. And then I met so many different incredible people that were like, oh, why don't you try this and this and this? So then it led me to be a youth member of parliament because a lot of my friends did that. And then I went for election. I had a very nasty hate campaign ran against me, which was an interesting thing. I was like, I'm a 16-year-old girl at the time. Why are you running such a big hate campaign? But then I realised that's because my voice matters to some groups of people, and there's always going to be people against what I'm trying to solve and what I'm trying to say. And then I've just done lots of different things. But then the CPR thing basically came about because in November of 2023, my mum had a cardiac arrest at home. We don't know where it came from. And essentially, me and dad had to perform 12 minutes of life-saving CPR. And luckily, me and him were both trained. He's a foreman for a firm that he works at. And then I've done work with Girl Guides. I'm first aid certified. We didn't do first aid on the little when I was little. But then it was kind of a big shock because the first thing people said were, well, one, is your mum okay? And two, oh, I couldn't have done that. I don't even know CPR. And yes, it's fabulous that the first aid responders talk you through it initially on the phone and they count it for you. And that's brilliant for someone who doesn't know. But the fact that me and dad did know meant that the odds were much, much higher of survival. Because with CPR, people on average come out with a 30% brain capacity left, and an occupational therapy test came out with 97 because they run into the brain. And we always laugh about this test because it was like, name how many farm animals, and like coming from a farming background, we knew quite a few. And she just said, I was at the farm, I was counting all the cows out, I was naming them, and they wouldn't let me count the individual names. It was like things like that. But a lot of people were just like, oh my God, I couldn't do it, I couldn't do it, I couldn't do it. And I've spoken to a lot of people since who have sadly lost their partners because they didn't know CPR, or they survived it and have similar devices to my mum because she spent 8 days in the hospital and she got a defibrillator placed in just under her heart. So if she ever went into cardiac arrest again, immediately it'd kick in and shock her back into place. But as I said, it was completely out of the blue. It could happen to absolutely anyone. And that was the main reason for the campaign, making sure that people know it just in cases, because you never know when it could happen.
Thank you so much for sharing that whole story, Anna. And I think there's so much to talk about based off of your story. And I remember when we first met, you actually told me about the hate campaign and the backlash that you faced and how that affected the activism that you've been doing. Can you tell me a little bit more about what it's been like to face that and how you've faced it over time? Can you share more about how you managed to overcome that part of your journey?
I mean, I've always faced a bit of backlash. I've always been one of those people that's a bit Marmite, you either love me or you hate me type. And with that, it was kind of like people from my old school. I left because I wanted to pursue different academic routes. It was a very vocationally based school, fabulous. And I loved my time there. But people were very like different minded. The politics classes were very heated. And basically, it was a vote with 11 to 18-year-olds. And I had my old friends from my old school saying this. And then another big one that I've always faced is being with Bite Back. People just assume, oh my God, you hate fast food. You don't want anyone to eat fast food ever again. I'm like, no, 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 that's not the case. We just want them to be more ethical about their decisions and like have that conversation with young people to protect us. We're not trying to ban it completely. We just want it to be done in a more sensible way. But people have always been like, I mean, I think the biggest thing that really hit me with that was my mum was out on a girls' day out with some of her friends, and someone put on their Snapchat story, just seen Anna Calvert's mum in McDonald's, not very bite back of her. And I was like, that's my mum's life. It's not anything to do. She's supportive of my social action, but she doesn't really get that element of it. And it's not a big deal at all. I mean, I still go to fast food restaurants, and I'll say that on the record, off the record to whoever wants to hear it. I do because that's what's pushed at young people. But I think with facing backlash, you've really just got to bring it and bear it. And if you give people that reaction that they're wanting, it will just not make you feel very mentally well. And it will also give them that gratification that they've done it. And it means they'll carry on doing that. I mean, if you knock them down and carry on, I mean, my favourite thing is one of the people that did it asked me how I'd done in that local area for the election. And I turned around to him and I was like, I won with a 75% majority. And I won in the school that you tried to shut it down at. And he was like, oh, well, that doesn't really matter because we're not going to listen to you at our school. And I was like, but he was so taken aback by it. I was like, oh my God, that is my bam, I've done it moment. Because I think most people feel like they've made it when they've got someone who's against them. And I thought you for that if you have someone that much, yeah, you might do something right.
That is all so interesting. And I do think that having to deal with some of those negative experiences and some of the hate, that's actually great training for maybe a career in politics or something like that. And I know that we've also talked about this a little bit in person, but you're working with all of these different issues and with different organizations. Where are you hoping to take all of this work in the future?
I mean, currently the main stress is applying to university. I'm not really fussed where I go. I just want to get a very good law degree and probably go down the sports contract route because I'm a big sports player. I mean, I've started up 2 women's rugby teams, which is another area where I've really struggled with people combating that and thinking that girls don't deserve a place in that sport. And I understand that lots of other advocates for women's football have felt the same, and it's a very, very similar effect in rugby. I want to go into sports law to kind of advocate for that in a sense and deal with the like human rights element and deal with contracts. I mean, I've always loved doing social media work. So dealing with social media contracts, that's what really fascinates me. And then eventually I feel like a political career will be my calling. I can see myself once I've done a few years being a lawyer, made my money, enjoyed myself, done what I've been really, really passionate about. I can see myself wanting to advocate for an entire constituency. And I mean, I'm not very sure what political party yet. It's seeing about who at the right time feels like they fit me the most type thing. But I can absolutely see myself going into politics.
I think there's lots of exciting things ahead, and it's all so great to hear. So now I just want to shift gears a little bit. But what motivates you to keep doing this work? Is there any advice, or are there any people that really inspire you to stick with it and keep doing this work? What inspires you?
I think what motivates me is the people turning around and saying, that helped me. I think that's the massive thing. And that's what really motivated me when I was starting my rugby teams was that these girls wanted a place to go where they could be themselves and they found that. And I think like with CPR, if I can have one person turn around and save someone's life, that would mean the absolute world. Because even if one takes it away and uses it, then that has made such an impact on that entire family's life. I mean, I would never wish anything that what my family went through in November, because it was so like heartaching to see all of us react to that because it was so out of the blue. And if I can stop one family from feeling that loss and feeling that heaviness of it all, then that would be the absolute dream. But role model wise, I just think there's so many great influential women out at the moment, and I see a lot of other youth activists going out there and really getting going and getting their voices heard. So I would say I really look at a lot of my friends in Bite Back and about their stories individually, and I take quite a lot of them away and speak about them at different events. Like in Italy, I kept talking about one of my friends Alice's point where she was like she got a text off Domino's before her mum on results day, and that really like resonated, like this is something that needs to be changed. And I just think it's all the powerful women that have come before me and the suffrage movement that even got me to be able to speak this openly, because I know a few hundred years ago I wouldn't have been able to, and I'd probably end up like a political prisoner somewhere because of me being too opinionated. But I think I really look up to Emily Pankhurst and all of the suffragettes that came before us that have always wanted to fight for something. And I feel like there's a big generation of women now that are wanting to do that same sort of movement to making sure that our voices are heard.
So I have one more question for you, and it's along the same lines as that last question. What advice do you have for young people who may be listening who may want to make change but don't know how to get started?
I would say just go out and find any opportunity possible. I mean, I was just a Google away from a lot of the opportunities I found, like just looking up like social action in my area or youth activism or like youth advisory boards. That's a really good stepping stone to get in there. I mean, I'm on the youth advisory board for Child's Net and they're fantastic. And that was very much, it's such a diverse group of people. But a lot of my opportunities, you've got to go digging for them, or you've got to know someone to be on an email list. And I feel like a lot of people can see that as a big closed door. But all it takes is getting that email out there or speaking to that one person or trying to find that connection. So I'm always very much network, network, network. It's the people you meet that will help you in life. And that's really, really important. But I would just say if I had any words of advice, it would just be go and get it. Don't worry about what people say. Don't worry about like hate campaigns. Don't worry about anyone or anything that someone's got to say because it doesn't matter. As long as you are happy with the changes you're making, everyone else will soon follow. All it takes is that one big moment to have an entire crowd listening.
It was so great catching up with Anna, and I am so glad that she agreed to share her story on the podcast. I think Anna is such a great example of someone who is ambitious and motivated to make change, and honestly isn't going to stop until she gets it, and I think that is really great. I think Anna's story and her work are a great testament to how change comes when you go and get it. Thank you so much for listening to this episode, and you can find Anna on Instagram and LinkedIn, and I included those links in the description of this episode. If you want to talk about anything I mentioned, please reach out to me by email at lily@bethechangepodcast.org or on Instagram at Be The Change Media Network. I am working on expanding Be The Change Media Network, which means bringing you more inspiring stories from amazing guests. If you enjoyed this episode, I would really appreciate it if you could leave the podcast a rating and a comment because it will help these stories to reach, educate, and inspire more people. And I would also love to hear your thoughts and feedback. Tune in for my next episode, but until then, be the change you wish to see in the world. Bye, guys.